Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts.
Let's make a playlist.
First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing.
Let's make a playlist.
You gotta kick it off with a killer to grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you gotta cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
No rules here. This is Let's Make a Playlist with Jonathan Howe. All right, we're back on another edition of Let's Make a Playlist with myself, Jonathan Howe. I am a little under the weather, so I'm going to keep this intro portion short and sweet and to the point. We are almost through the first season. There's a little bit of a gap there again because, life happens when you're busy making plans. But we're getting the show going again to finish off season 1. And then over the summer, we'll plan season 2 out. A little bit of housekeeping. You can follow me at Jonathan on Air. That's where you can find me on the socials and see clips of the podcast. It's also the YouTube channel handle as well. If you want to jump on and listen to the podcast over on YouTube, be a subscriber there. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, at Green White Checkered band. That is my band. We've been playing some shows. We're going to get ready to record some new music. I think we got a couple songs in the can that we are ready to hopefully release not too long from now. And then also, thanks, Finn. Appreciate that. Also coming up down the line, we got a show in May with Strangely Steven at, we're going to be playing at the Bank Art House in Welland. So watch for details on that show and more coming up down the line. All right. Kenny Holt is my guest this week of the Lazies, guitar player. Awesome dude, fellow motorsports fanatic like myself. We got into all things racing, all things blogging and travel blogging, as he likes to do that as well. If you are watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, I've attached a link so you can go and check out Kenny's blog. Check it out, give it a read, and help maybe make some travel plans based on Kenny's experiences. That was really cool stuff. We got some awesome guitar stories as well. Great hot takes about Kiss on the episode. But before we get to Kenny, I have to add to my playlist here, which is going to be a track. I don't have my list in front of me, so hopefully I haven't done this one. A song that makes you laugh. A song that makes me laugh. I feel like I did do that one already. You know what? Maybe I'm going to change that one up because I feel like I picked that one once upon a time already. Let's see. A song with your favorite guitar solo. Oof, good question. What would I pick for that to be on my playlist? I'll go Long Road to Ruin from Foo Fighters. That is my favorite guitar solo. It is an insane solo. I've tried to learn it several times. Have not memorized it yet, but at this point in my life, I guess I should just be focusing on listening to Green White Checkered and playing Green White Checkered songs and solos as opposed to other bands. But hey, if there was a favorite solo of mine, I would say the solo to Foo Fighters' Long Road to Ruin is definitely a song with my favorite guitar solo. With that said, let's get to the main episode. Here is Kenny Holt on Let's Make a Playlist. All right, this week for Let's Make a Playlist, I got my pal Kenny Holt joining the show. Kenny, how's it going tonight, buddy?
Hey, g'day, mate. How you going? You all right?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. You know what? I think we got to talk about right off the hop. Some folks might hear your accent, and they might realize you're the first international guest we've had on the show. So, Kenny, you got to tell us about where you're from, and I got to know you as kind of like a Welland guy, I think, and running into you at shows at the warehouse and stuff. But talk about your upbringing and how you got to where you are here and being with the Lazies and stuff.
Buddy, Welland is a far cry from where I'm actually from. So I know I sound Aussie, but I am from London, England. So I was born in Bromley in London, and then I moved here, 21 years ago. So the accent just kind of never faded. And then somewhere along the line, and my dad's also South African too, so like my English accent was never really an English accent ever. I picked up a little with the Afrikaans in there, and then somewhere along the line, I don't know, 2016, 2017, something like that, I started gigging with the Lazies just as like an opening band in one of the previous bands that I was with. And then, yeah, I started to just get to a point in about 2018, 2019 where I just drank enough of their beer where they were finally like, okay, dude, like, okay, you're just part of the band. You're just, you manage, you do the TMing. And then from tour managing, I think that lasted a few shows before I was on stage with them. And then, was it last year, 2024? Yeah, I was on guitar. I filled in for Shearer while he was taking a year off. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been really good, actually. So I love it.
Awesome. What's your kind of musical background? What was the stuff you listened to growing up, and what did you end up gravitating towards in terms of shaping your own playing, being a guitar player?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because growing up, I had like two sides of two different music because mum loved all the 70s, what we call British invasion rock bands, right? So she loved Mud and Sweet, Thin Lizzy, Status Quo, Queen, Bowie, all of that sort of thing. And then, but dad was very into, like old country western, like proper country western, like Chris Christopherson, Don Williams, old school Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, that sort of thing. So I kind of had two of those influences going on. And then when I was about, I don't know, like let's say 11 or 12-ish, somewhere around there, I grew up with Kerrang TV. So I'm very, very fortunate when I was growing up in England, we had Kerrang TV, obviously Kerrang, major magazine, major movie, music, television, and all the rest of it. Very, very influential for me. And, like that was right around the time that kind of Blink were getting big, I think with like Enema and Take Off Your Pants. And then Some was coming out, Linkin Park had just come out. And so like, I kind of heard all of those bands, they were up and coming. And I was like, those are cool. Like all my mates back home, they loved them. And I was like, but it's just not me. And I think one day my mum said to me when I was about 12, she's like, oh, you should listen to Guns N' Roses. Like, I think you'll like them. And of course, like at that age, I was like, yeah, mum, like, what do you know? Like, whatever. Like, and then of course, like, I think the video for Sweet Child of Mine came on. And if you've ever seen the video, which I'm sure you have,
Yep.
when they're setting up and like the camera's kind of like panning in and out and then like the band's doing their thing, and then there's the dog and stuff, and then you get the little title, it says Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine, or whatever, and then Slash walks up to the camera, he plugs in, they snap the shutter, and then he plays arguably one of the most iconic riffs of all time. And it was like a moment, like a light bulb went off in my head, and I just remember being like, okay, that's the fucking band. That's the band. And I remember at the time, I used to get like £5 allowance a week, and that was just for like sweets and whatever we wanted at the corner store. And I saved up for 3 weeks, and I went to HMV and I bought AFD for the first of probably 4 times at this point in my life on CD. And mum, back in England, like you had parental advisory, so like if it had a 12 or a 15 sticker on it, you had to be 12 or 15 years old to buy it or whatever. And so, yeah, mum, I handed over the cash. Mum was like, yeah, no, it's all good. And then I went home and just wore that record out.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
So,
didn't quite get, I didn't quite get a lot of it at the ripe old age of 12. But now, having read the books, being, what am I, 35, 36 years old, like I kind of get a lot more of what they were talking about. I just knew at the time, I'm like, this record just sounds awesome. Like
yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting to have the conscious recollection to know that like Blink is blowing up. All these pop punk bands are kind of the hit thing, especially I feel like Kerrang, being a Green Day fan, like I feel like every time Green Day was doing anything, Kerrang was like jumping on it and pushing those
Yeah,
guys.
it was
So for you
massive.
to be able to have that, get that suggestion of Guns N' Roses, I feel like from there, it kind of was almost like, if I'm guessing your musical journey, you kind of almost just went backwards from there in terms of the influences and the stuff you got into, right?
Yeah, in a sense. And like, I mean, I found Guns, and then from Guns, I found Crew and Skid Row and all of those things. But one of my favorite pastimes, and I think I've kind of run out of bands at this point, but like one of the things that I did in my late teens, early 20s, sorry, was to look at a lot of those old school 80s flyers from the days, when Motley and Guns would tour together, and I'd see the opener, and it would be like, oh, special guest XYZ. And I'm like, oh, okay, who are these guys, And then, like,
Yeah.
I'd find, because I kind of list a lot of those bands, and I'm sure that everybody does with every genre, but it really sticks out to me with hair metal. And of course, that's my pride and joy. Like hair metal in through and out. I mean, give me Cinderella, give me Rat, give me Danger Danger, right? But I found all of these bands because I kind of was like, okay, well, if Motley and Guns are like your A-list bands, I'm like, all right, like, Cinderella and Rat, they're probably not going to sell out an amphitheater, but like they'll probably do the Cool House or something. So like, there's your B-list bands. And then like I've been down rabbit holes and I've been trying to find bands like Southgate and South Gang, and I've been like, wow, who's this D-lister with one record, you know? But then I find it and I'm like, oh god, it's just the best. I don't know what they put in those records. I don't know what the production value is, other than more reverb. It's just the best. I love it.
More reverb, some good old fashioned tape as well. I mean, yeah.
That's it.
One of the things that we kind of talked about it leading up to this interview is you've got a pretty aggressive take on Kiss, and I feel like the
Oh,
world needs to hear it.
it's so funny because everybody shits on Kiss. Everybody gives Kiss a hard time. And don't get me wrong, man, I think they probably got something in the region of like 46 original records, right? And let's be honest, they probably don't have enough great songs to fill an EP. Like, let's just call a spade, right? Two out of two songs off of every record, they're the good ones, and then there's eight fillers, right? But but where I love Kiss is the Unmasked, because everybody listens to rock and roll all night and Detroit Rock City and all the rest of it. But man, those Unmasked records are hidden gems. Ace wasn't in the band. I mean, even after we got rid of Vinnie Vincent, I mean, he was only around for a hot minute. And I mean, Vinnie Vincent, then he had Vinnie Vincent's Invasion, which was a truly god awful record that nobody ever needs to listen to. I'm just calling a spade a spade. But then you had Bruce Kulick and Mark St. Jean. And honestly, man, like from a guitar player's perspective, the records are flawless. The gimmick was kind of gone. I mean, yeah, they did the super hair metal thing, pink spandex and all the rest of it. But it was the best songs. It was the best production. It was the best look that they ever had. It was just the best guitar player. I know that there's a lot of Ace Frehley fans out there that argue that, but Bruce Kulick is a monster, man. Like, he is just phenomenal. And I'm really sad to see that Kiss kind of retired and never really did another farewell tour, or like part of the farewell tour with the Unmasked stuff. Like, there's so many good records there that just they didn't do. They didn't do anything with it. There was so much opportunity to do something cool with it, and they just didn't.
And that's so strange to me because they obviously, yes, the mass stuff, it's iconic. Of course, there's the iconic lineup to it all. But like you say, if there's good music there, you should celebrate that portion of your catalog. That was kind of like
100%.
for me when I got to being a big Rush fan, and I got to see Rush's final show in Toronto doing the R40 tour, and the way that they did their farewell is they kind of pretty much touched on every single era, every single album in
Yep.
like reverse order, from like playing the newest stuff first and then right to the very end,
I
like
think I
something
was
from
at
their
one of
first
those
record.
shows.
Yeah, like it was a great tour, and it was a great
Yeah.
way to do a retrospective kind of show like that. And yeah, I feel like there's got to be a faction of Kiss fans that probably are right there with you and probably a little bit sour about it.
Yeah, it's just such a missed opportunity. I mean, they marketed everything else. I mean, there isn't a thing on the planet that doesn't have a Kiss logo on that you can't buy. I'm just kind of perplexed that, like, I mean, all right, the last 5 or 6 years, like, Paul sounded terrible, backing tracks. We've all seen those terrible videos on YouTube of all of the backing track fails and all the rest of it. But it's like, I don't know, man. Like, you could have gone out there, you could have reunited with Bruce Kulick. I mean, he's touring with Grand Funk Railroad right now. He would have happily done something cool with that. And at the farewell show, they didn't even invite Ace to come up and play anything. So
Yeah,
I just kind of feel that, like, from what I remember with those farewell shows, there was 2 nights in Madison Square Garden, and they played exactly the same set list both nights that they played on the whole tour. It's just, I kind of felt like the end. I was just like, ah, man, like end it, please, because this is embarrassing. But like, also, like, it's such a massive missed opportunity.
yeah, I feel that for sure. I wanted to ask you too. We were talking a little bit before, and you mentioned something about a new guitar. What's the deal with the new
Oh,
guitar?
you want to see it?
Yeah, we got a chance. We got a
Okay.
video
All
podcast
right.
for a reason. Let's see it.
So there's a bit of a backstory to this. So Mike Palermo, who used to play in a band called Super Garage
Hmm.
in the 90s, they disbanded, and at some point in time, he opened up Mike's Music in Thorold. So literally around the corner from you, right?
Yep.
And then so I don't know how it happened, and I don't know how he got in touch with it, but I think the story goes about 10 or 12 years ago, Alice Cooper was coming to town, and something happened with Tommy and I think at the time it would have been Kerry Kelly and Ryan Roxy's guitars. They got damaged in flight. Something happened. Anyway, Mike knew somebody. Somebody called Mike, whatever. Anyway, he raced up to Toronto and he saved the day. He took him a bunch of guitars, and the guys were like, "These are the best things ever. Like, I want you to make all these guitars for me." So he started doing customs for Tommy Hendrickson, and that led to like Mick Mars, and he started doing all of these custom guitars for people. And so back in 2019, Tommy Hendrickson from Alice Cooper asked him to make him one of these 335s. And so he's like, well, I'm not going to make one, I'll make 16 of them, right? So he made a small limited run, and when he released it at the time, instantly 16 of them were sold. Well, 15 of them were sold. One of them was given to Tommy, and this, that, and the other thing. And forever and a day, I said to Mike from about 2019, I want you to make me one of these bloody guitars. Like, I want one, right? And so he was like, yeah, you know, like, and during COVID, like, it was such an easy thing to fluff me off. He's like, oh, I can't get the parts, you know, I can't do this. I'm not doing it during COVID. I'm not working, whatever. So then about a year and a half ago, I really started to hammer him again. I'm like, Mike, I bloody love that guitar. There's a picture of Johnny Depp playing one. There's a picture of Tommy Hendrickson playing one in his store. I'm like, Mike, I really, really want one of these things. And he told me about 6 months ago, he's like, they were a limited run. I'm never doing them again. So I was like, oh, man. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm like, but I manifested it. And so about, I don't know, 3 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I happened to be in St. Catharines. And a buddy of mine who went to Mike's Music was like, hey, you should come to Mike's because he has your guitar on the wall. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I guess this guy, this guitar collector, bought one, and he literally had it sitting in a closet for like 3 years. And so,
Oh my God.
So he just had it sitting there. And I think his wife kind of just cracked the shits one day and was just like, hey, you don't even play this bloody thing. Go sell it back to Mike, because I think that's Mike's only like prerequisite. If you buy one of his Palermo guitars, you have to sell it back to him, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so it was just sitting on the wall, and I was just like, okay, well, I love it. So, and I just swiped my credit card and I paid for it. So it was a bad day to be the credit card, you know?
Yeah, I bet. I mean, that's such a fascinating piece too, because I'm looking at it. There's no F holes for it to be kind of that 355 style.
Yeah, it's semi-hollow body, but no F-holes. Third pickup, because, I mean, why would you not?
Yeah.
It's all, obviously, I mean, like, it's pretty road-worn, but, I mean, that's kind of the style. But, I mean, one of my Les Pauls is pretty road-worn as well. I love them looking like this. It's as light as a feather, surprisingly, and it's as heavy as. So, I mean, like, I don't know what pickup is in it, because I'm not that much of a nerd. It just sounds great through a JCM 900, and that's really all that matters, you know?
That's so wicked, and that's such a cool local story. Shout out to Mike's Music. I mean, they're awesome.
100%.
They're always fixing great stuff. Anytime I've had, actually, I had my very first acoustic guitar, which was not a very like expensive model or anything. Like I think it was like a J Tersa Junior or whatever. And I had let it sit around, and the neck was all bent and all this stuff. And I took it to Mike, and he's like, I can fix this, but it's basically the amount of work that I'm going to have to do is more than the value of the guitar. And I'm like, it's sentimental, man. If you get it somewhat playing, I will play it. And sure enough, he did. And man, he did a great job.
Mate,
so
he's honestly, he's such a good dude. And like, I mean, I won't tell you the price tag, but to be fair, like my argument is like, if you go to him, you want a custom, you know, I mean, like he does a lot of, does a lot of relics too. So, I mean, like, you know, he'll build you a custom guitar, you know, and let's say the price tag is $3,500, right?
Yeah.
When you really think about it, it's not really that much money, because if you go to Long and McQuaid, and I'm not dissing anything about Long and McQuaid, they sell good enough products and whatever, but if you go to Long and McQuaid, you're looking at $2,500 minimum for a really good guitar.
Yeah.
And then really and truly, it's just an off-the-shelf thing that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can buy. And then by the time, you know, you take it to Mike to get it fixed up and you get it rewired, or you want a different pickup, you're going to be at the $3,000 mark anyway. So you might as well just pay like a little bit more, and then you get something that's truly custom to you. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to take a little longer, and also too, I mean, like all of that money goes into Mike's pocket, and I don't want to sound like I'm like anti-corporation or whatever, but like, I mean, Long McQuaid's got enough money.
Yeah.
Give it to a
No,
local guy.
absolutely. The independent builders and the guys that are actually masters of the craft and not just dealers of, you know, it's like anybody can go and buy a Chevy off the lot, but like if you're buying
100%.
like a full resto mod Corvette or something like that, I mean, why wouldn't you want something like that,
A
right?
hundred
And
percent, 100%. So I mean, like, we've got shows coming up in. We're doing. I shouldn't say too much, but we've got Canada, and we'll do Europe again this year, I'm sure. And so, I mean, the thing will get a few more scratches on it before the end of the year. And I mean, even if I wasn't to tour with it, it's still a lovely looking guitar. It's still, something that I've wanted for literally years. So I couldn't be more pleased with it. So.
yeah, it's a real cool piece. Like I've never really been an ES kind of guy, and I was looking at it and I was like, I don't have anything like that in my collection. And the fact there's no F holes on it, it makes me really want to try it and know
Yeah.
what it sounds like, man.
No, it sounds amazing, and I was worried about the headstock dipping because it is a hollow body, like the unbalanced SGs do. If you
Yeah.
get a cheap SG and then the head dive and stuff, but no, it literally sits perfect. So, no, I couldn't be more pleased with it. I play it every day. It's the best.
Awesome. Well, there's one more thing I want to nerd out with you a little bit before we get to making a playlist here, and that's well, you're a motorsports guy, and you're one of the motorsports guys I love talking with online because you're not just an F1 guy, but you've got a real appreciation for a lot of different types of motorsports. So, where did that passion come for you?
Oh,
Where did it start?
probably when I was 3 years old. My mum, my dad, and I went to Florida, and we just happened to go on July 4th weekend or whatever. And there was a NASCAR race there. At the time, it was the Firecracker 400.
Yep.
Now it's probably the Pepsi 400, if it's still the Pepsi 400.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Coke. I think Coke might have it now. Maybe Coke
Oh,
Zero
okay, all
400 or
right.
something like
Well,
that.
so
Either way.
whatever it is, it's the summertime race at Daytona, and honestly, like, I mean, we got tickets day of. They were probably $10 a piece back then, and honestly, I just remember being in the stands, and I just remember feeling that energy of all of those race cars just going in circles, and I'm like, this is the best. And so from there, it definitely spawned when I was, what, I must have been three, and then I remember tragically when I was five, I remember seeing Senna die on the telly. And I just had it in my head at the time. I was just like, man, like, if you could die doing something that you love, like, that's got to be interesting and passionate and whatever. And so, yeah, I just, from 94 onwards, I've just been a huge rev head. I've had my moments where I dip in and out of Formula One or dip in and out of NASCAR and stuff, but like, there's never been a year where I'm like, nah, I've always been a rev head my whole life. It's the best.
Yeah, and it's, you know what? It's the perfect sport to match with rock and roll. It doesn't matter what discipline of motorsports you follow either. Like I know like Formula One's a little bit more like kind of upper, nowadays, and it's less likely that you're going to see a big rock show at a F1 race. But I still think that like that iconic TV intro with Fleetwood Mac. I'm sure
Oh,
you remember it.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Perfect soundtrack.
yeah, and then literally ITV or BBC at the time, whatever it was, the chain, and yeah, like, I mean, the way that used to build up with the
Hmm.
crash sequence and stuff. And I mean, like, I'm kind of on the fence with Formula One these days because not because it's just elitist. I mean, it's always been elitist. It's always been a rich man's game, but because of this whole drive to survive thing, like, now you see everybody wearing McLaren sweaters with like the MP4-4, and I'm like, hang on, wait a second, like you don't even know who Senna was, so like, why are you wearing the hoodie?
Yeah.
Like this the drive to survive is really over sensitization. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, um,
Sensationalized.
thank you, sensationalized it, and I kind of hate that because to me it's always just been kind of like this underground thing. But now everybody loves the Formula One, and I saw NASCAR has like a little drive to survive thing. I forget what it's called, Full Throttle or something, and
Yeah.
that was cool, but I mean, for me, like, the best racing in the world is the Aussie V8s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many reasons why. I mean, they still use there's still stick shift. There's none of this paddle shift nonsense. Rubbing is racing with the V8s. They're still V8. I mean, they're not hybrids. They're just full petrol done.
Yeah.
Turning petrol into noise, and that's really the best thing of it in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I always explained the V8 supercar and everything that was happening in that Aussie racing scene as like take NASCAR, but if you can't stand the fact you're watching guys go in circles for 500 laps, but you love the intensity and the
Yeah,
constant beating and banging, do
hundred
that. Like
percent.
it's
Well,
F1 meets NASCAR, really.
100%. And like, I mean, Gizzy's now doing full-time NASCAR Cup
Mm-hmm.
Series as of next year. And I mean, like, nobody really knows the V8s, but it shows the caliber of driver because Scotty Mack's now in IndyCar
Mm-hmm.
and doing really, really well. Marcus Ambrose came over, did NASCAR. He did okay, but you know, first time Gizzy was in a Cup car in Chicago, he bloody wiped the floor with everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
like, the quality of drivers from down under are just superb. And I'd love for that series to get the recognition that I think it deserves. They were doing a little bit for about 2010, 2011 there for a little bit where they were doing a race in Dubai. They did one in Texas a couple of years back as
Yeah.
well. So like, I think they're branching out, but man, like it's the best series in the world. And of course, every year they're at the Bathurst 1000, which is just, that's my day. I don't watch the Super Bowl. I don't care about the Grammys. I don't like, whatever day Bathurst Day is, that's my day. I put the telly on, and of course, because of the bloody time change, I think Bathurst is Sydney's 15 hours ahead. So I turn the telly on at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. For me, Saturday afternoon, so it's Sunday morning there. And of course, like I'll have the telly going until 5 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning for me, right? So like it's an all-night affair. The nachos are going. I have to go across the border because I can't get any Aussie beers here. Like it's a full day affair. Oh, it's a whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome. You know what? I might have to take you if the door is open. I will 100% join you for that
Mate, we'll
marathon.
get an esky right in front of the fridge. We'll fill it with fucking Fosters. We'll have a great time. It'll be the
Hell
best.
yeah. That sounds like a fucking dream of a way to watch Bathurst, brother. I love that. All right,
It's
you
the
know
best.
what? Let's jump into it. I know you're a guy who's got some passionate takes about music. We've talked about them already. But Kenny, I'm excited to see what ends up on your playlist here. So this is how it works. I've got 60 or so suggestions in this David Bowie Vans hat for
Okay.
songs to be on your playlist. So I'm going to draw them out of the hat. Whatever
Yeah.
the first song that comes to mind for you is, that's what's going on your playlist. All right.
Easy. Easy.
All right. So we'll start with song number 1, which is going to be, let me reach in here. I think I got 2 there. There we go. All right. So song 2, we're starting strong.
Someone.
You're sorry. Song 1 is suggestion 42, I should say. Your favorite dirty or horny song?
Oh, Animal by Nine Inch Nails.
Oh yeah. What a pick. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think there's much better than Closer for Nin. All right.
That's funny because Nine Inch Nails just announced a tour, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
I was talking about it on air this week. So, I mean, like, I think there's like a stretch where it's like they're playing in Toronto, and then the next night is My Chemical Romance, and then like a night later or a couple nights later is Oasis in Toronto or something.
We
Like
really
they're
need, we really need a revolution of new rock bands that people care about. Because
we
like, let's be
do.
honest, like all of these guys, they're 30 years into it. Like let's give some new guys. Let's give the Lazies a chance.
Yeah,
Like
that
why are
why
we not
not?
selling out the amphitheater?
I wonder that question all the time. Every time we play you guys on hits, everyone's like, "Oh, this is awesome. Where can I catch them next?" I'm like, "You got to follow the Lazies. Make sure you know what's up."
That's it.
But yeah, no, I'm so with you. I it's not that I'm tired of these bands, but like you can only squeeze the lemon so long, right? Like
Oh,
if
of course.
it's running dry. Like we got to have something because like even when all these guys like die off or stop touring, like who's gonna fill the void?
Well, that's just it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy as chips that AC/DC is still going, but it's not really AC/DC, is it?
No, it's not. It's not the same show that I saw back on the Black Ice tour
No,
almost
God
15
no.
years ago.
God no.
No.
What
All
are you
right,
gonna do?
song 2, Kenny. I like
Hit
this.
me.
I like this start. We're going with a song from a band that you think everyone should listen to.
Generation Wild, Crash Diet.
Tell me about them.
Oh, they're a band from Sweden. So I've been to most of Scandinavia at this point, and I love Scandinavia. I love Scandinavian rock bands. and I like Scandinavian women. There's just no reason to like any of it or not like any of it. Yeah, Scandinavia just like they just have perfected the glam revival. You know, bands like Crash Diet, Cruel Intentions, Crazy Licks. There's just I mean, there's so many. Popeda is another one. They're a bit older, but Popeda is another one from Finland and stuff. Yeah, there's just so many good bands. Hardcore Superstar. I could go on for a month. We need to do a segment on hits of solely Scandinavian rock and roll bands because your listeners are froth.
That's awesome. I have to do my deep dive there because it's like when I think Scandinavia, it's like it
You
feels
think black
wrong
metal.
to just go to ABBA, but yeah, it's like that's what I
Yeah.
think of.
Yeah, you either think ABBA or you think black metal. And, like,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, I like Mayhem and I like Venom, right? They're both great, but bands like Crash Diet, Hardcore Superstar, Cruel Intentions, 69 Eyes, I mean, they're more of like a goth band, but I mean, there's so many good bands coming out of Scandinavia.
yeah. One thing I wanted to ask too that we I forgot about before we started the playlist was your blog, and I want to
Oh,
talk a little bit about the dive bar tour that you've kind of been on throughout the world.
okay, so this kind of started, like, really as a dumb idea because, um, how did this start? 2016, Maysides were going to do a bunch of shows, uh, East Coast, throughout Ontario, whatever, and we called it the All You Can Drink Tour, right? Just as an homage to one of our songs, right? And so, anyway, at the time, I was like, oh, you know what? It'd be cool to help promote this is if I wrote an article in Chris Illich's paper there, The Sound.
Yep.
And so I was like, sorry. I was like, oh, I'll do an article and I'll talk about like my 5 favorite rock and roll bars from around the world. And at the time there was like Toronto, LA, London. I think one was in Victoria and then one may have been in New York. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like there's 5 bars, 5 cities, whatever. And then I don't know, the idea kind of got shelved. Nothing really happened with it, whatever. And so about a year ago, I actually read a book called Round Island with a Fridge. And so I happened to be in Ireland about a year ago, and there was this British comedian who had taken a bet basically for £100 back in the 80s, and he was forced to hitchhike around Ireland with a refrigerator. And so basically, like, he hitchhiked the whole island, and it became this huge national story. People put him up, like, it just became this thing. So when I was reading it, I was just like, man, like I still had this idea in the back of my head of this article that I wanted to do, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll turn it into a blog because 5 became 10, 10 became 15. I was just like, oh, how am I going to manage this? And then I was reading his book, and I'm like, man, I really like the way this guy like does his little anecdotes, but then he talks about a little bit of history, then he talks about a little bit of comedy, like so. I really, really liked Tony Hawk's writing style, and so I was just like, man, why don't I just do a blog on these things? And
Yeah.
so the blog's kind of cool in a sense because, I mean, it's not in any way, not that you'd really tell because when I travel, like, it's just chaotic, as I'm sure you can imagine with a band and, you know, everything else. But I just kind of, like, I don't really have a rhyme or reason to where I'm writing about and why. I just, like, feel inspired. Like, if I've gone to, say, the Riff in Helsinki, right? I'll talk about why I'm in Helsinki, the history of Helsinki. I could talk about architecture. I could talk about bands. Like, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. It's just like, you know, whatever I decide to write about with Helsinki, you know, we'll reference the bar, we'll talk about the bar, whatever. But it's more just like a little travel blog in which I source out cool rock and roll dive bars, talk about history, talk about architecture, needless to say, drink copious amounts of beer. And it's just like a nice little recap of kind of where I've been in the world. So, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's a really cool read. I was going through some of them today in preparation, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, like if anybody's reading this, it's like you could almost make like yourself a bucket list based off of your experiences, and like that's kind of what I did. I was like, I'm like, okay, I could realistically definitely get to this one. This one
Yeah.
might be a few years down the line, but I could get there. Like it's
Yeah,
a
no.
really great read.
Well, that's really nice to hear. So thank you, because what I want to do eventually, and this is probably going to take 3 or 4 years to put together, because I think I've got about 20 entrants at this point. Is I actually want to turn it into a book, but I want to kind of turn it into like a travel book in a sense of like um, expand expand the blog, expand certain things, add more pictures and stuff. Because I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that I really wanted before I went to New York was I didn't want a Pinterest, or I didn't want to, I wanted like a map of Manhattan with like the 50 best restaurants to go to and why. Like, is Thomas Keller still there? French Laundry does Anthony Bourdain still have anything? I mean, obviously he's passed away. Does he still have something? It would just be really interesting. It's sort of like a Michelin guide, but of Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
Then I was just kind of sitting there and I'm like, oh man, like I don't really see anything that's like of this idea, but I've still got this idea to turn my thing into a book because but in order to do that, I want to make sure that I have, at least 5 continents in there, go to Southeast Asia. I've got to go to some more places in Australia, over to New Zealand. Like, so I've got a lot of traveling to do in the next couple of years. But like, that's kind of like a little goal of mine, say 2026, 2027 sort of thing to, start looking for a publisher and start figuring out how to edit a book. I mean, for a guy that failed grade 10 English, and that's a true story. I failed grade 10 English. To think that like I'm going to have a published book one day is just wild,
Yeah. And I mean, like I say, I've been reading them, and you wouldn't know that you're a failure of grade 10 English, man. Like, you got a
Yeah.
great writing style, and
Oh, thank you.
it's relatable, man. Like, that's ultimately like the best way to go about it. Is it's like, if you've been there, you can relate, and if you can't, you can at least imagine it really good. And like I say, I hope to use that as a bit of a guide for myself to start
Well,
trekking
yeah.
around.
Yeah, the one thing that I will put in the book, I mean, I got to figure out how to do it on the blog, but one thing I will put in the book is a translation section for everybody, because I know that when I'm doing my writing, what makes it difficult for people to read sometimes is like I'll take English slang or Aussie slang, combine them, and then I also throw in a bit of Canadian slang as well. So like the lexicon is from all over the place, and I'm just like sometimes like I had some friends read it in Germany, and they were like, "I love it, and I thank you for doing one on Pitcher in Dusseldorf." But they were like, "I really kind of had a hard time following what you were saying a lot of the time." And I'm like, "Well, that's because if you don't know that, like in England, like we don't call a vacuum cleaner a vacuum cleaner, we call it a J. Edgar, right?
Yeah.
Because J. Edgar Hoover,
Yeah.
obviously he was a president, but like a vacuum is a Hoover, so we call it a J. Edgar, right? So like there's so many like little nuances in the language that I have, and I know my Aussie mates do, and mum and dad do, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it can be hard to follow. So I mean, one day we'll put a translation in there for everybody.
That's so funny too, because there's a podcast that I listen to called Bandsplain, and the host is from LA. Like, she's an Iranian immigrant kind of family, but like spent a lot of time growing up in LA, kind of thing. And she actually had Matt Helders from Arctic Monkeys on ahead of like
Okay.
a season they did on just British bands, so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they could get like a definition of like what is baggy and what is like a lot of
Oh
the things
yeah.
that are terms that were very popular around Britpop in that era of British music.
Oh yeah. It's an entirely, like I say, like, and if you use slang in the South, they won't understand it in the North,
Yeah.
right? England's very very divided that way, right? So, it's interesting, and I've been having a lot of fun with it, and so it's nice to see some of the responses that I get from around the world. And on that website in particular, like I can look at my what do they call it, demographic and psychographic and stuff, and I can see that people from Thailand were reading it, and somebody from India checked in, somebody from Angola checked in and read it. I mean, I don't even know where Angola was.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see.
That's wicked, dude. All right, let's do song 3 for the playlist, Kenny. And it's going to be a song to drive fast to. You're a petrol head, like you
Oh,
said. I mean, I know you're going to have probably an opinion on this one.
oh, you know what? Poison by Alice Cooper, and
Oh, good
I
pick.
got a weird reason for that.
Okay.
And that's because when I was a kid growing up in England, I'll never ever forget this. My mate's dad used to pick us up from school, and he had an old, must have been mid '80s Ford Escort. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm old, all right, and there was no seatbelts in the back seat of this car. So we used to put like me, my brother, him, his sister, and like a mate of us. So there was 5 of us on the back seat, no seatbelts, nothing. And I remember my mate's dad used to just crank music and just drive as fast as he could. And when I heard Poison by Alice Cooper for the first time, it was kind of like the feeling that I got from Sweet Child of Mine, when I was just like, oh my God, this is the band. And I just always associate that song with just being in the backseat of a Ford Escort. about 10 years old, no seatbelt, just cruising. And of course, back in those days too, he was just gunning smokos. So it's just, I mean, it's just such a different generation 30 years
Oh
later,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I was just hanging out with my basically like my sister, she's a friend from high school, but we're real close. She's got a toddler and all this, and like even her, like she was driving fast at a couple points as we were trying to get to a hockey game, and I was like, "Damn, you haven't lost the lead foot for a mom." I'm like, "All
Yep.
right, good to see." I'm like, maybe there is some hope for some people who are
Yeah,
parents
yeah,
out there, not to change too much, but
yeah.
yeah. All right, let's go to track number 4, and we're gonna need a song with your favorite guitar solo.
November Rain, Guns N' Roses.
Oof. No wasted
Or
time
should
on
we do
that.
that one? Yeah, yeah. November Rain, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, I mean, so how many solos does that one technically have? Because I feel like it's got what,
Oh, I mean, it's
3?
probably got 3, pushing on 4 if you really want to get technical.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. I think 3 is definitely the safe number to say. But
Yeah,
I mean, what an iconic song and what an iconic video too, eh?
the best.
All right, let's reach. I'm gonna reach deep in here for track. What are we on? Number 5 here. Let's go with a song from your favorite Ontario band.
Ooh. Okay, let's think. A lot of good bands. I've been really lucky enough to play with a lot of really good musicians. Any song from my favorite Ontario band?
Yeah,
Let's go with Bad for Good by Skullfist.
Skullfist. All right.
Speed metal band from Toronto. They're great.
Is that one of those bands that you've played with too?
Yeah, we've done shows together, but I
Yeah.
haven't played in Skullfist.
No, that's I kind of figured like you were on the road with them or played a gig with them. So where I try it's so hard to like pin you down as a musical guy because I feel like you've got a really wide taste, which is kind of it's refreshing to talk to rock and roll guys who have a wide taste. For you to pick a speed metal guy, do you listen to more metal these days, or is it almost like
No,
you have to be in a certain place in a certain mood for something like that?
I think I'm all over the map. So, like, I mean, as much as I love listening to speed metal and as much as I love Scandinavian glam metal, I also love, country western. And I'm not talking about Luke Bloody Bryan. There's a barbecue stain on my white t-shirt, right? I'm talking about guys like Tanner Ursery, Tyler Childers, Charles Wesley Godwin, that sort of thing. I'm sure that one of those names will get thrown in the hat in a minute. But then, like I also love bands like Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah, really, eh?
I'm not even ashamed to say it. It's not even a guilty pleasure. I don't mind a little bit of Coldplay. Like there's older Coldplay. I mean is it Viva La Vida? I think was the one record that's a few years old. So I think anything a bit older than that. Yeah, like I just a sucker for a good melody. And if there's a good melody, I'm all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of the same way, especially even with Coldplay, where like those early records, like the X and Y record, of
Yeah,
that record's fantastic in terms of an alternative rock record from the early 2000s, right? And with some pop
yeah.
hints. But you know what? This might be a good spot for a country and western kind of track. Your favorite acoustic track for track 6?
Oh,
I mean, the Death Cab's got
fav-
some options there too.
favorite ever acoustic track?
Yeah,
I'm inclined to say Patience by Guns N' Roses, but we already have a Gunners song in there. So
you
we
can
can
repeat
say,
if you want. I'm not going to
no,
stop
no,
you from
no.
repeating, but
I think Seneca Creek by Charles Wesley Godwin is just deadly.
Seneca Creep. All right,
Yeah.
I don't
I can
write that
also
one
tell
down.
you, I'm going to tell you a funny story too, because you mentioned that I'm hard to pin down musically. I used to be in My Son the Hurricane. I don't know if
Yeah.
you know that or not. Okay, so I was their guitar player for a minute, and then I Chris Sippos came along. He was way better suited to it. He's way better of a guitar player than I am. He went to school for jazz and funk. So, yeah, mate, you play that guitar. That's way more your style.
Yeah.
But they asked me for a couple of years to run the sound and lights. So I was always on tour as a light technician for about a year or two, I think it was. Again, similar thing to the Lazies. I went as a tech, and then I ended up, don't ask me how, every show on that tour, I would get up, I would drop 16 bars, I would rap a verse, and then I would race back to my board, right? So I know. I bet you weren't expecting that tonight.
No.
So yeah, we did that for about a year or so, and then on that tour, I remember we finished in Fernie, British Columbia, and then we had to get back to Manitoulin Island. And I remember on the drive back, Jacob Bergsma, who was their MC for Ever in a Day, he said to me, he's like, you know what, Ken? I've sat next to you for 26 days now, driving across this whole country, doing 21 gigs in a row or 22 gigs in a row, whatever it was. And he's like, I still cannot figure you out musically. I don't get it. He's like, I don't get it. Something that I think that you'd love, you hate. And then something that I'm like, oh, I can't hate this. You're like, yeah, that's great. You will never figure me out. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse.
I'd say it's a blessing. I think it's better when you're not so easily boxed in or pinned down by people. I think, and you know what? I think even just as somebody who, is a musician who works with bands, I think that makes you that much more valuable, even just from an opinion and having your voice around. I think that pushes people. Like, I think of what happens even to the biggest bands sometimes is that they kind of become their own echo chamber, and
Yeah,
the things that they love or the things that they are influenced by, it almost kind of shrinks down. And so the stuff that they're producing almost shrinks down. And so if you don't have somebody like yourself who has like that kind of different taste around you, whether you're working as a tour manager, whether you're working as a lighting guy, or whether you're managing, like there's so many different roles that people can be involved in bands these days, right?
yeah, yeah.
I think having that outside perspective and having a perspective as diverse as yours is like a huge asset to anybody really that wants to be
Well,
involved
I
in
mean,
music.
maybe it's my good looks and charms, or maybe that's why the lazies keep me around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yet to be determined.
All right, buddy. Let's move on to track number 7. I wanted to ask too. I forgot to before we got into the playlist. Was when was the last time you made somebody either a playlist or a mixtape or a mix CD? Like, have you ever done that for
Oh,
somebody?
you know what? Like, I'm really bad with the playlists because I have a virulent hatred to Spotify. I don't use Spotify. I utterly hate it. I never make playlists for myself on iTunes, and I use Apple Music, and
Yeah.
nobody else in the world seems to. So it's impossible for me to make a playlist for somebody and send it to them. Um, but as for like a mixtape, mate, it's probably been 15 years. I mean, I've how long I've had my trucks now 10 years, so I would say yeah, 10 years. I haven't had a CD player in the truck for 10 years.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's next to impossible. Although I'd love to because we can delve into the next subject later on if you like. But I really feel like these sorts of like going to see a movie in 35 millimeter or 70 millimeter, going to actually rent movies, making playlists, like all of these things have got to come back because I feel like so many people are missing out on experiences these days, and I feel like the experience of like going to Blockbuster's gone. The experience of making a mixtape, that's gone. Going on your holidays and actually being away and then getting your pictures back, 4 months after Boots or Walmart had actually processed the film, and then you look through your holiday snaps and you're like, oh well, these three are shit, we'll throw those ones away. To
Yeah.
actually having holiday pictures or something, like I feel like all of those experiences are just completely gone these days. And it's such a shame.
You're 100% right. And it's funny. I was actually doing a story over Christmas break on the air that, people were kind of like, making their predictions for what's going to come back, what trends are going to be in for 2025. And a lot of people pointed to CDs making a
Yeah.
comeback. From the sound perspective, a lot of what I've read and the people I've talked to, like my uncle who's a bit of an audiophile, like a lot of the problems that folks were having with fidelity with CD players, where there was, it still sounded a little too digital. It didn't quite have that
Yeah,
warmness. A
yeah.
lot of that stuff has been corrected by modern technology. So CD players are better than they ever were. People are trying to develop and start selling Walkmans again that don't skip
Yeah.
when you walk and stuff like that. So, and even from like the perspective of kids buying VHSs because they're sick of playing the streaming game because
Yeah.
you never know when who's got something or what. So I'm right there with you. I'm really frustrated by streaming services with music. As a musician, I hate
Yeah.
seeing my 42 cents in my bank account that I needed, that I made from my 1,000 streams of my song that it
I know
cost me
it's
X
criminal.
amount of
It's
dollars to
criminal.
make. It's brutal. So I'm right there with you. Now I'm glad you brought that up. What do you see? Like, you're obviously on the road. You kind of have that inside information and perspective of what's selling at the merch table? Like, are people asking you guys for CDs when you guys are on the road? Is it asking for vinyl?
Mostly
Yeah.
vinyl. But like the vinyl thing, like the vinyl, it's such a double-edged sword because it's such a bastard to tour with because it's
Mm-hmm.
heavy, it's huge, it's wildly expensive. So
Mm-hmm.
like we have print shops in Europe that take care of Europe, and then we have print shops here, right? But like it's such a tough one to tour with at my level. I mean, at the level of Sum 41, I mean, they just have people do it for them, whatever,
Yeah.
right? But at our level, like it's such a tough one to tour with because the outgoing expenses to print vinyl are just horrendous. I mean, you're looking at, I know people have a moan when they see a 40 or a $50 price tag on them, but they're $22, $23 a piece each, without
Mm-hmm.
question. So
Absolutely.
it's such an upfront cost. Needless to say, there's a 250 minimum. So I mean,
Yeah.
for me to print vinyl, suddenly I got to cough up $10,000, $15,000. These are all things that people don't think about, right? So
Yeah.
you go in, so like it is really tough. I would love to see, I what I really miss about, and actually I was in Sunrise in the mall a couple of days ago, and I remember I was flicking through the vinyl bin and I found an old Rat record, and I was like, oh no way, like look at this Rat record, and like I spun it around, and it was just the greatest hits or whatever. But like there was a dude standing next to me. He's like, "Oh man, I love Rat," and I was just like, "Yeah, Rat's awesome, right?" And we had this like conversation about how cool Rat is, and then like that's sort of interaction. That's what's missing from playlists and Spotify and streaming everything, right? Like I don't know anything about this guy. I never had any more of a conversation, but like you know to have that interaction with the guy was awesome. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just such a lost art that we're just missing these days. It's such a shame.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, and that's kind of what the show, the genesis of this show in my head was that, I miss hearing my favorite musicians talk about their favorite music because that's how I found half the bands that I get into. It's like, yes, I love Green Day, but then when Billy Joe Armstrong says like my life was changed by the Replacements, I'm like, okay, well, who the hell are the Replacements?
Yeah, yeah,
And then I
hundred
go and
percent,
listen to them, and then I'm like, this is my next favorite band besides Green Day, and I
hundred
love them,
percent,
right?
hundred
So
percent.
I just think that conversation, like you're saying, is so important, and so it's so lost because it's like if people are just having discourse, it's online and it's generally negative, and it's like I can't believe you think that thing is good, or I can't believe that is your opinion, or this or that. Like people are
Hundred
almost like
percent.
picking fights or looking for fights, and that's the only thing that drives engagement. Whereas it's
Yeah.
like for me, I'm looking over your playlist and I'm like, I don't really know Crash Diet all that well, so like
Oh,
automatically there's a band I want to go listen to.
yeah, and you will tomorrow because they're
Yeah,
great.
I'm just looking forward to it, dude. So,
Perfect.
um, all right, let's go to track 7 here, which is going to be a song from a band in your local scene or hometown. Now, I will open this up to you because I know you're a guy who's obviously been around to a lot of different places, lived in a lot of different parts of the world. So,
Yeah.
if you want to go birthplace, you can go birthplace. If you want to go where you're living right now, whatever works.
Song from a band. Okay, I will have to preface this. I don't go to a lot of shows these days because I don't know. I got a job, a career. I'm getting old.
Yep.
But I will tell you, there's a band called the Lemon Pistols
Yep.
who are tearing things up at the moment. Um, yeah, we could throw Swamp Lovin' by the Lemon Pistols on there. They're doing
All
some
right,
really,
sweet.
really good things. Yeah, they're Toronto boys. They're good mates of mine. They're doing some really, really good things. Happy to support them.
Lemon Pistols. I don't know if I have to go back and check. I think I was either just about to book a show with them or they're playing around the same time that my band's playing at the warehouse, but uh I might be on a bill with them. I'd have to double check that. But yeah,
Okay.
either way, looking forward to checking them out.
Yeah, no, they're great.
All right, dude, let's move on to track 8. Let's see here. Let's see. We got All right, we're going with a song that makes you laugh.
Oh man. Oh, Cotton Eye Joe.
Nice
Hey,
pick.
I'm convinced that that's the most racist song ever. And people are just okay with it. I don't know. Is it about an STD or is it just about literally a guy picking cotton? I don't know.
Yeah. Dude, that song gives me a little bit of PTSD because there was one time for Hits FM, we did like I can't remember how we phrased it or what we called the contest, but it was a battle. And we took 2 listeners, locked them in a car with
Oh
Cotton Eye
gosh.
Joe playing. and it was like, could you make it to the end of like a 4-hour radio show where all you heard was
Oh
Cotton Eye
my
Joe?
God. Did
And then
anybody make it?
whoever, I want to say both of them made it to the end and split the money. I think there was like I think there
Really?
was like $1,000 on the line or something like that. And then,
That's mad. That's
yeah,
mad.
yeah, I couldn't do it. I was outside of the car just videoing and taking photos and like whatever. And I just was like, I can't believe this. This is
Wow,
insane.
that's heavy. I couldn't do that. I mean, twice, when I'm on the piss out and about, that's hilarious. But yeah, 4 hours nonstop, no way. I couldn't even
No
do
shot.
November Rain for 4 hours nonstop.
Yeah, exactly. And at least that time you'd only probably end up hearing it less times because song's probably triple the length of what
Yeah,
Cotton Eye Joe
exactly,
actually is, right?
exactly.
All right, we're moving on to track number 9, which is going to be a song from the 2010s.
Oh my God. What was good in the 2010s? I mean, not much. Help me out. What was popular in the 2010s there?
I mean, it depends what you're listening to. I'm trying to think. Like for me, the 2010s, that's when I started listening to bands like Pup, The Dirty Nil, kind of local stuff to
Yeah.
Toronto. I remember, like, I was in music school and my buddy was really into, like, there's an Australian band, and now I can't remember their name.
Oh, don't say the chats. They're the worst thing.
No,
Oh, okay, thank
no, it
God.
was like they were like more of like a metalcore, like progressive metal band, and I remember them. They weren't like big, but I just heard them a bunch because my buddy was into them. Like they're into that. They were kind of one of those like 7-string guitar type bands or
Oh yeah,
whatever
animals
from
as
Aussie.
leaders sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
North Lane. I think it was North Lane. That
Okay,
might have
all
been.
right. All right, I tell you what then, in the 2010s, I'm shameless self-plug here.
Go for it.
This was pre my time with the band. You Can Do Nothing But Trouble by the Lazies. That came out in 2017.
Perfect. We'll take
Done.
that.
Yeah, I take back my comment that there was nothing good in the 2010s.
That was one of those, and it's great that you bring that up because again, it just goes to show. I think the 2010s was a real time where I don't want to say the stuff on the radio was anemic, but it was like it was a time for all of us to kind of get invested in our local scenes. Like I mentioned, starting to see more like punk bands and
Yeah,
kind of just straight up rock bands like the Nil and like
yeah,
Pop and Pew Pew Pew, Bad Waitress, OBGMs, all these bands that started popping up in Toronto while I was there. And you mentioned the Lazies, like. I kind of think that really laid the groundwork for what we're seeing. Where like swear when I talk to kids younger than me, they're going to shows and they're going in their local
yeah,
town. They're not going to Toronto and seeing the big bands the same
yeah.
way like
No,
some of us did.
yeah. I feel like too, like I forget who said this. I was listening to a podcast or I saw it on the telly or something one day, but like they were saying like every you know, decade. Like the '60s had a vibe, the '70s had a vibe, the '80s had a vibe, and then like the 2000s had a vibe. All right, the vibe was Fred Durst and it was god awful, but what was the vibe in 2010? Like what
You
was?
know what it was? It was the Mumford and Sons. It was like you got to
Oh
have a
yeah, that
guy with an
bloody
acoustic
yeah,
guitar and a
yeah,
banjo and a stomp clap hey oh kind of
yeah.
thing.
The less
That's what
said
the
about that
2010s was.
shit, the better. The
Yeah,
less
for
the
real.
less said about that god awful period of time, the better.
That was something else. And there's just like anything, there's good records amongst that, good songs amongst that, but
I
there's not as many as you'd think.
No, 100%. It's like, but then the thing is, the question that I always have, it's like, listen, I'm sure that Dua Lipa is a wonderful person. I'm sure that she's lovely to have a cup of tea with, okay? But I guarantee you, you're not listening to Dua Lipa records in 40 years. You're just not. You're just not. There's just no substance there, you know?
No.
Like, I mean, maybe I'm old and miserable. I mean, that's a fact. But like, there just isn't the substance there. At least that's what I feel.
I feel that, and I'm glad you brought that up because let me turn it around then. Do you feel it's a lack of substance, or do you feel like it's also oversaturation with a lot of music in general, but especially pop music, where like, in the '80s you have a Michael Jackson, and like, yes, there was pop stars that came and went, and there was, kind of one hit wonders and all that sort of stuff, but it seemed like there was fewer and fewer stars the longer you go back in time. Whereas now it's like there's a new person every week popping up with a great
Well,
pop album or whatever, and then
100%.
they're
I
gone.
mean, I kind of view that as just like this disposable generation that we kind of live in. I mean, like look at what we deal with. Like relationships are almost disposable because
Mm-hmm.
everybody can just go and swipe right. You know, music is just 30-second tidbits on TikTok. I mean, listen, I love Ghost, okay? I love the band from Sweden, Ghost, okay? But I liked them when they were a five-piece band coming and playing the bloody Sound Academy, right? I don't love the fact that Mary on a Cross has been turned into a disco 30-second whatever soundtrack for some bloody teenager to do a stupid dance on. Maybe I'm maybe I'm old and miserable. I mean, that's like I say, that's a solid possibility. But it just goes to show, it's just like, everything is just 30 seconds and then it's just disposed of, right? So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe there's a new pop star coming up every day because A, they lack substance, so there's just nothing for them to stay. There's no reason for them to stay around. And then B, people just move on so quickly, they just don't care.
Yeah.
You're just as expendable as dog shit, you know?
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier in the show too, you're talking about, Kerrang and the impact that it had on you growing up. And that's something that when I go back and listen to podcasts or I dive into books and stuff talking about these culture scenes from 20, 30 years ago, is like it's almost kind of like there was a monoculture and you waited on it, right? Like if you were waiting for the next Guns N' Roses release, like you had to wait till MTV chose to spin that video. And if they didn't
100%.
spin it for 5 days, like you were waiting around 5 days to hear it, right? Whereas
100%.
now everything is just so like in your
Yeah.
hands the minute you want it that there's no having to search. There's no having to value your time in
No.
growing your fandom of
No.
a band.
I remember when I was watching Kerrang, like we used to have an old VHS player, and I would record the music videos to the songs that would come on. Like I remember Ozzy had Dreamer and Gets Me Through. Like he did that little EP in the late '90s, early 2000s, or whatever. I think it was actually off No More Tears. Tell a lie. But anyway, like he had these songs, and then he had these music videos. Same with Guns N' Roses. Same with a lot of these dudes. And I would record the music videos, so then I just had a VHS of music videos that I enjoyed, watching, listening to, singing along to, whatever, learning to play the bloody guitar to, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And but I couldn't get November Rain unless they played the bloody thing, and I could only get it if I watched Kerrang long enough to catch the start and the end,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, it's just I don't know, like I know that I moan a lot about it, but I just feel like yeah, everything's just disposable, right? So it's just what do you say? It's
Yeah.
it's it's unfortunate, but I mean that's kind of where we're at with it.
Yeah, I'm always the forever optimist that things will improve or get better, but I think I'm afraid of what that process is gonna look like for us to get to the point of being
Yeah,
a
yeah,
society that values art first. Like, what's it gonna take for us to get back to that point? Is it the fact that we get tired of AI musicians and songs that aren't generated by humans anymore, and where it's like,
yeah.
man, what happened to like a guy like Bob Dylan?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, during bloody World War II there, Winston Churchill was asked, hey, we need funds for the military. Can we defund the arts? And he said, well, if we defund the arts, then what are we bloody fighting for? You
Mm-hmm.
know, that was only 80 years ago he said that. The
Yeah.
Beatles weren't even a thing then. So, I mean, like, yeah, it's just such a shame to see where we're at. I hope that the world does come to its senses and stops this AI nonsense. Because it's like, man, like AI art isn't bloody art,
No, it's not at
you know?
all. No,
So,
I'm with you. All right, we're on to track 10, brother, and then we're looking for a song by a band that you never got to see live.
um, well, surprisingly, I never saw Kiss live. What of the hair metal dudes? Who did I never see? I've pretty much seen all of those guys. Yeah, let's throw a Kiss song in there.
All right, sweet.
Yeah, let's do Reason to Live by Kiss.
Nice.
That's a
Reason
nice
to
little
Live.
ballad for you.
Is that like a unmasked power ballad then?
Yeah, 100%.
Nice. Nice. I like that. I like a little something different. Track 11, I'm going to reach back in the Bowie hat here. And what do we got? We're going with a song featuring your favorite drummer or drum performance.
Favorite drummer? Well, let's think about that. Phil Collins, favorite drummer. Phil Rudd, favorite drummer.
Mm-hmm.
For two very different reasons. Who do we go with? We got to go with Collins. Do we go with Genesis or do we go solo? I feel like everybody's going to hate me here. Another Day in Paradise by Phil Collins.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest songs ever written, and of course Phil Collins is just a beast behind the kit.
Yeah, I don't think he ever gets enough love. I don't know if it's just the fact that, he went solo and became this kind of pop rock star or what it is. But I think anytime people talk about like the all-time great drummers, it's like they're going to Neil Peart or they're going
Yeah,
towards John Bonham and they're going towards guys that are, deservedly so in that conversation. But I think sometimes that people really sleep on Phil Collins and they forget that Genesis was like one of the original prog rock bands.
100%. You know, it's funny though because I don't like Genesis with Peter Gabriel, but I do like Genesis with Phil Collins. But I love Peter Gabriel solo and whatnot. And I mean, like obviously, I love Phil Collins solo. I mean, he can do no wrong, Tarzan or no Tarzan, like he's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I mean, Serious Hits live by Phil Collins. It's just like, man, like what an incredible record. Like
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that one.
wicked. All right, dude. We're on to the last track of your ultimate playlist, Kenny Holt, and we are looking for a song that is your favorite keyboard or piano song.
Oh man, you've already taken November Rain off of that.
I know that's
Um,
tough, eh?
God, what are we gonna do? Do we go? No, you know what? We go Do Hast by Rammstein.
Nice. I love it.
That's what we're gonna go with.
Talk to me about Rammstein because they're one of those
Oh,
bands again where like if you get it, you get it, and I don't think enough people get the amazingness that is Rammstein.
I mean, it just speaks to the power that is music because I can speak very, very little German. Very, very little. I can order a coffee. I can say, hey, how are you? I can say, I miss you. That's about it, right? Good night, thank you, that sort of thing, right? Um, but it speaks to the power of music because then you kind of sit there and you go like, holy man, like these guys are playing to 70,000 people a night. I mean, forget the bloody ACC or whatever you call it these days, Scotiabank. Like these people, these guys will come here and they'll sell out the Rogers Center.
Mm-hmm.
So they're playing to 50, 60, 70,000 people a night. For the vast majority of people, they can't speak German, at least not even well enough to understand what the lyrics are. They don't have screens at the show. You just got to be up front and center. And it's just this industrial German metal band doing whatever it is they want to do and just setting off a ton of pyro in the meantime. It's just
Have you gotten to see one of their shows live?
no, I haven't seen one of them yet, but it's on the to-do list. It's always hard to try to take time off of work and go away on vacation to go see a band because half the time when I'm taking time off of work to go on vacation, I'm going to play with a band, you
Yeah.
know? So, I mean, that
And
is
I
what
feel
it
like
is.
if you're going to go see Rammstein, you got to see him on German soil. I think that's the ultimate experience,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I was in Germany quite a lot last year, as you probably read, and like honestly, like it's one of the greatest countries I've ever been to. Like it's just the people are awesome, the food's incredible, the beer is just the best beer in the world. But it's not somewhere where you can just go for a weekend.
No.
Like it is a trek to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the kind of trek too where it's like you say, you're not just going for a weekend. You got to hunker down and maybe do like a week and a half, at least two
Yeah.
weeks, maybe three.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
such a phenomenal country. For anybody listening to this that's never been to Germany, please, I implore you, go to Germany. It's phenomenal.
Cool. All right, it's on my list now. If it wasn't already from reading your stuff, but all right, Kenny,
Yeah.
we've reached the end of the playlist portion of the show. Let's go over it here. We've got Closer, 9 Inch Nails, Generation Wild, Crash Diet. We've got Poison from Alice Cooper, November Rain, GNR, Bad for Good, Skullfist. We've got Seneca Creep. We've got what do we got here? Swamp Lovin', Swamp Livin' or Swamp Lovin'? I've got bad
Swamp Lovin'.
Lovin'. Okay, I got bad handwriting, so sometimes I write down songs and I'm like, what did I write down?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But either
No
way,
stress.
Lemon Pistols making the list. So
Yeah.
Cotton Eye Joe making the list. Nothing But Trouble, The Lazies, shout out. Reason to Live, Kiss, Another Day in Paradise, Phil Collins, and Du Hast, Ramstein, completing your 12-song ultimate playlist, Kenny Hole. How do you feel about that list, brother?
Yeah,
Like
I can
that
live
feels
with
pretty
that.
good.
I can die with that. That's fine.
I think that's a good list, dude. I think I think we got something here that's going to be pretty entertaining. Now, before we move to the Patreon only exclusive portion of the show, Kenny, I want to give you a chance here to kind of, for all of our regular listeners that aren't subscribers, where do they find you? Where can they read the blog? Where can they check out your music?
Oh, well, I'm just on Instagram. I mean, Facebook, of course, too, but like I barely use it. I'm not 60. But yeah, Instagram, ken.holt is my, what do they call it, a handle. And yeah, the blog, there's a link to the blog in my profile as well. Yeah, I mean, I can send you a link and you can put the link on your thing as well. Like easy peasy. It's just blogger.com/whatever it is.
Sweet.
And yeah, that's about it. All the music's on Spotify. For literally every band I've ever done. I mean, my own stuff, my solo stuff, Lazy's, Hurricane, Maysides, I don't know, Lemon Pistols, whoever else I've toured with. There's countless. Amy Gabba, Lambs Become Lions. Yeah, it's all on there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this, brother. Let's Make a Playlist is a podcast hosted and created by me, Jonathan Howe, for House Media. At Jonathan On Air is where you can find clips of the show as well as all things me. Jonathon is how you spell Jonathan for the record. Please rate, review, subscribe, like all episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support the show, consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/Let's Make a Playlist. There you can find exclusive content, longer episodes, and sign up to receive our end of season zine. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends, and we'll be back with more playlists.